And this is great. Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, guys. I'll turn it over to Karen to start and we'll get going. Karen, take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Natasha. So welcome everyone to our first cloud-to-cloud migration webinar. My name is Karen. I'm the founder and CEO of Highway 3. We're a platinum Atlassian solution partner based out of Victoria, British Columbia. We were founded in 2001. We became a partner in 2019 of Atlassian. And we achieved ITSM and cloud specialization in 2023. So it was a very big year for us. And we're happy to have Rob join our company at the same time. So Rob, to introduce him a little bit, he's supported the Atlassian suite since 2010. He's performed hundreds of migrations, well before they became very popular. And he's also a senior full stack developer. So thanks very much, Rob, for doing the webinar, and over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. As mentioned, I'm Rob Little. I am a senior Atlassian consultant at Highway 3 and the migration specialist. And I'd just like to repeat thanking everyone for signing up today, and thank you for your time. I would just like to mention, if you have any questions as I'm speaking, just feel free to jump into the Zoom Q&A and drop your question in there, and we'll get to it. And yeah, with that said, I'm just going to jump right in. So Atlassian has been very focused on migrations, and a lot of this has been directed on server to cloud. Cloud to cloud is becoming more popular as people move around in the cloud, and Atlassian has a six-phased approach to performing any migration. And you can see what this looks like on paper and in theory. However, in our experience at Highway 3, and Highway 3 is a cloud specialized partner and have been doing this for many years, we do find that the reality of this six-phase approach is that it's really all about the testing. So you can plan out all you want, but until you hit go and test the migration, you won't really know what your results are going to be. You won't really know what's relevant, in other words. With the cloud-to-cloud migration, there are a bunch of different aspects, I'd say even complications, as you compare them to a server-to-cloud migration. And this is typically because server to cloud is a one-to-one. You're moving one site into the cloud. Cloud to cloud is more typically, it involves merges. These are combining existing instances. So 2, 3, sometimes 4 sites all merging into one destination. At Highway 3, we do consider your instances from top to bottom. We try to take a look at each aspect of the way you use each tool, preparing for testing and migration strategies that benefit your desired end result, and as well as your current operations. Now, maybe you've considered all of these angles at your org. Maybe this is your first look at what would be involved, but these would be the most impactful aspects. Now, we wanted to ask you about your current Atlassian ecosystem, so I'm going to toss to Natasha here for a quick poll.
Thanks. Yeah. We just want to know if you've encountered a need for migrating your Atlassian ecosystem. Maybe you are experiencing a merger in your company. Maybe you are understanding the new features of cloud might do well to restarting your ecosystem or your platform. So we want to know. I'll leave that open for a few minutes. Rob, if you want to continue, and we'll kind of take a gauge of what type of people are on this call and what they're dealing with, so we can chat about what you need.
Awesome. Thanks, Natasha. Let's move on to tip number 1, understanding your options. The migration options for a cloud-to-cloud migration include merging into a single site, performing a net new merge where end sites merge into a net new site, and switching organizations, which would be having 2 co-located sites and just having them under the same single org. So you wouldn't be merging developer groups, and all that fun stuff. You just have all that fun stuff all under one org. Now, option 1 is the most typical. I'd say that's because it minimizes the impact as compared to number 2, and it's arguably easier to manage than option number 3. Now, that said, your organizational structure and the way you do business might make this decision for you. On to some migration methods. Now, we can use a combination of these. You're not locked into one exclusively. Nothing's mutually exclusive here. But that said, the number 1 method for doing a cloud-to-cloud migration is using the cloud-to-cloud assistant. This is essentially a cloud version of the JCMA and CCMA, which are the server tools Atlassian has supported for server to cloud. The other options are going from cloud to data center to cloud. And this was Atlassian's recommended method until a few months ago when the cloud-to-cloud assistant became more mature. An example of this maturity is the JSM. JSM wasn't supported a few months ago, but now it is supported in the cloud-to-cloud assistant. So if you request early access to that, you can get JSM support now.
What does JSM stand for, just to clarify?
Sorry, Jira Service Management.
Excellent, thank you.
Over that. Thanks, Natasha. There's another method for migrating is using a third-party plugin. And some of these do work pretty well, but it's important to keep in mind that with many third-party plugins, there is usually an expense associated, and they're all limited by the same Atlassian API. But say in a situation where maybe you have a lot of assets, you might be able to find a plugin that can migrate assets, and it might be an advantageous path. And of course, there's data only, which is just as it sounds, literally exporting the data and merging it into an end state process. This might be good if your target destination instance has very strong organizational processes in place, then you might just decide to do a data only migration. So I've mentioned options and some methods. Now let's cover some approaches. There's optimize and shift, which is Highway 3's recommended approach. And what you're doing with optimize and shift is you're moving as much as possible and you're leaving behind what you can. Excuse me. And there's also a phased approach, and this is more explicitly leaving some teams behind on purpose. They will finish up their work there, finish up their project there, and then they'll basically start fresh in the new instance at a later time. Another advantage of the phased approach is in that situation, you have an old instance and you could reduce the licensing for that. You could have a subset of those users, a subset of functionality. You could keep people happy while also being pragmatic and moving some stuff over. So let's talk in detail about the cloud-to-cloud migration assistant. Now in the cloud, this is now known as the migrate product data feature. And in the ever-changing world of Atlassian nomenclature, it's not surprising they rebranded that. Now we'll get into what is supported versus not supported very soon. However, when we do a cloud-to-cloud migration, we typically use a sandbox, and we get the sandbox from the target or destination site. I'll use the words target and destination interchangeably. It just means the place where you're going to be merging into. Now, for using a sandbox, I do need to mention that you need a premium license to have access to the sandboxes. Now, a partner like Highway 3 Solutions can help you understand if that would be the right decision for your organization. That said, sandboxes are a fantastic way to test migrations. As you can see on this slide, for a go live, we actually might even sometimes go directly from a sandbox into the target destination, into production, in other words. And this would be highly dependent on how many fixes were done in that sandbox. And an example of that would be if you spend a lot of time setting up permissions and customizations, then it might be beneficial to not do that twice. That said, more typically, we do use the sandbox to confirm everything, test there repeatedly, perform UAT for an organization, and then we will cut over directly from the source to the destination, as you can see in the slide. So cloud to data center to cloud. As I did mention, up until a few months ago, this was the recommended path. And the reason that it was the recommended path is because they allow you to take what is a full backup of the cloud site and just kind of move it into the data center. And then you can use the JCMA and CCMA tools to move them back up into the cloud. A reason why you still might go this path would be dashboards and filters are supported with going into data center to cloud, and they're not supported at all with the cloud-to-cloud migration system. A very simple Jira software project, Jira software only, you could also use this method. The disadvantages, though, you can't do this and expect to get anything that is cloud only. So if you're using team managed projects, something maybe like an automation rule, these won't flow down data center to cloud nicely. And an obvious point to add is you also need a data center instance. So what migrates cloud to cloud? As of this webinar, we have Jira software, Jira work management, Confluence, all fully supported, and Jira Service Management in an early access program state. It's been EAP for a couple months, so that'll probably be moving to general availability sometime soon. And I did mention one of the largest gaps is cross-project dashboards and filters, and they don't migrate with the cloud-to-cloud tool. It is important to note with my statement that at Highway 3, we recommend that the goal be to leave behind what teams don't need. So this might be an opportunity to pragmatically think about those dashboards and filters and just reset up what you need on the next, in the destination instance. Now, having said that, this slide is what does not migrate, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means. It's just some of the bigger items. There are workarounds for most, maybe even all of these, such as doing a data-only migration, which you might do with, say, Jira product discovery data. Just a couple more examples of things that can't migrate would be duplicate project and space keys. And it can be a huge potential issue. There are ways to solve that. Most app data from third-party plugins doesn't migrate. And I did mention advanced roadmaps is unsupported. Well, how do we manage this? At Highway 3, we like to identify what is hard or unneeded and anything that can be avoided, and otherwise plan for it if it's a must-have. So I'll just loop back to the projects and space keys that I mentioned as an example for how do we plan for this, excuse me. So in the context of those project and space key collisions, we would help identify those collisions early on, confirm with the subject matter experts and the power users and the business experts that they are in scope. If they're in scope, we determine which side, either the source or the destinations, the issues could be remediated easiest. And an example of this remediation might be, say, transferring the wiki content to a new space that doesn't have a key that collides, or maybe even just deleting the Jira project that had a duplicate key so you avoid that collision altogether. The rest of this list that I implied is long, but it largely consists of relatively small things. This is the stuff that's not on the slide. So stuff like project avatars, custom emojis, etc. Not data impacting, more of just a user feel. Part. And yeah, a partner like a Highway 3 with our broad experience performing cloud migrations and assisting teams can aid you in helping you make these decisions and helping you decide. And this leads nicely into our second tip. Tip number 2 is to reduce complexity. Now, how do we reduce the complexity of a migration? I've mentioned we're going to leave behind as much as we can. Historical data might be an issue. So we could leave that behind and still have a nice plan in place. And that could be something like setting up the old source instances as read-only, moving it over into a new org, reducing the license count in that org. And at that point, these issues are available for data access. You could even have a free plan here. If you had legal or compliance reasons, this would be a great option where your data could stay and you don't have to move it to the cloud, or move it to the new cloud, I should say. You can take this opportunity to improve and standardize in general. This might include things like sanitizing naming conventions, looking at dashboard sharing and the filters driving those dashboards, and of course, focusing on governance and security. An example of this would be if the target instance is very well set up for provisioning, it has great permission schemes in place, good product access groups, and nothing too messy and complicated, it might be a good opportunity to sanitize the source that is being merged into that destination. So we're going to focus on what you really need. And what you really need is historical issue data, users and groups and their permissions, so who is going to see that issue data and how, and wiki content, so all of your wiki pages. Now, the good news is that for Confluence, it's pretty well supported. And this is unless you use whiteboards, and those are not at all supported yet. No, I'll get into the yet later. Tip number 3 is test in the sandbox. Now, as I have mentioned, sandboxes are Highway 3's preferred approach using the cloud-to-cloud migration assistant method. A reminder, though, sandboxes do require premium, as I mentioned earlier. The most significant benefit of using a sandbox for me is you almost get a full complete replica from the production instance. Now, I did say almost, and I will clarify that in a few slides. But first, we'll just mention a few downsides to sandboxes. one of the biggest downsides is they can take a while to set up if the instance is too large. Some other important ones are you can only have one sandbox. It's one per product, but you can only have one sandbox. Moving data in or out of these sandboxes isn't always the easiest. And that leads to, they can be not very reusable. So in reiterating your testing, if we need to push data in again, it's honestly sometimes better just to create a new sandbox. Now, earlier today, I made a comment about Highway 3 finding that the 6-phased approach from Atlassian for doing cloud migrations is really all about the testing. Now, this is the meat and potatoes of the sandbox functions. This is what really benefits you to use this tool, and this is the sandbox validation screen. This screen can reveal a lot, and it can be saved as a nice handy test plan to assist Highway 3 in your team. And behind the scenes, this screen is always gaining functionality from Atlassian, who's enhancing the cloud-to-cloud migration assistant features. Another way to put this screen is the guardrails. So it's the reason why it's important to get into the validation portion of the testing phase as quickly as possible and as repeatedly as necessary. So I implied some limits. The sandbox instance size is limited. So if you have if you have an instance that's less than 40 gigabytes in total, you can push data to it multiple times a week, and you can do that yourself. Anything over 40 gigabytes, and you have to engage Atlassian support to help with this, and they limit you to once a week. And the sandbox doesn't support all data, but Highway 3 can help you parse through what is and what isn't supported. An example of what I just mentioned would be a manual data import, say from Confluence. So if you export a single Confluence space and try to import that into a sandbox, it probably won't play very nice. And this is just something that Atlassian is both aware of and actively working on. But it is a limitation. So users and groups users and groups may also be shared to production. And this is the big one where I said it's almost a copy from production. And honestly, there's no way to detect this until a partner like Highway 3 can look at the admin.atlassian.com portal for your organization and determine if your organization is put under what they call the old user view. And if you're in the old user view, there won't be a crossover. But if you're in what they call the new centralized view, this is where there is a potentially overlap to production for users and groups imaged off in sandboxing. Sandboxes are getting a lot of love from Atlassian in the next few quarters. And this, again, just speaks to Atlassian putting more and more time and effort into, I'd say, both their cloud-to-cloud migration assistance core functionality, but also into the other portions of the workflow that functionality requires, like a sandbox. I did mention single sandboxes earlier, so something coming down the pipe relatively soon is multiple sandboxes, which would be a very handy feature. Imagine having a set of pre-production environments all set up as sandboxes. If your organization needs a training environment for onboarding new employees, you could have a training sandbox. You could have a UAT sandbox. You could even have a development team sandbox. So that would be very cool to have. Jira sandboxes and Confluence sandboxes very recently, I think they might still be rolling this out, so you may see this or not, but you can now pull in specific data subsets without that data pull being basically resetting the whole sandbox. So you're basically able to pull over a subset of data for Jira and Confluence now, which is very handy. And I would say one of the biggest feature requests from sandboxes that Atlassian is putting development into would be the ability to push data from a sandbox to production. Now, an earlier slide, I did have a sandbox pointing to production, but that would be more, you're going to be copying everything from the sandbox into production. This would be more of an ability to stage small stages into your UAT environment and then get UAT sign off on that small feature and then promote that small feature directly into production. So that's coming down the pipe too.
Great.
Tip number 4, preparing your team. When merging 2 or more cloud sites, you are likely going to have a variety of subject matter experts and power users in each instance. At Highway 3, we simply recommend using these team members as your testing users. It's important to note that preparing communications is obviously very vital as well. This is not just communicating that the high-level cloud site is going to have a different URL, but on any configuration changes that would be deferring to the destination target. An example of this would be if you're merging, say, a European instance into a North American instance, the users of the European instance might be used to certain number formats, a different language setting. When you're doing a cloud to cloud, all of these settings will be deferred to the destination. So just communicating stuff like that. Similarly, if a third-party plugin is actively used on this one of the sources and you're migrating it over and there isn't an appetite or desire to license that plugin on the destination, then just communicating about potential gaps in what some of those users have seen as functionality. Now, standardizing naming and conforming to best practices. Now would be the time to help optimize and start net new in the merged destination. So performing user audits and group reviews are very handy at this stage, because when you merge, the destination instance groups will likely already be controlling the application and admin access. So let's take this opportunity to clean up the group access. It's also a good time to maybe include a review of the domains your organization would like to use, in the Atlassian org portal. The source and destination both might have different domains, and you might want to only have one set of those domains, possibly even the destination instance. This will be up to how your business is basically handling the two instances merging. And similarly, it'll be a good time to just remind yourself what release track the destination instance is on, especially. You might have been on a constant getting everything as it's released in the cloud, and it maybe the destination is on the batched releases. Your team testing. So I'm going to reiterate, that you do want to test early and repeat as much testing as you can. Well, why would we repeat our tests? Well, when you're doing the cloud to cloud migration and you see errors or failures, you need to obviously mitigate these errors and failures. And the only way to confirm that they're fixed is to perform another migration test. So that's where repeating your tests is important, because it will validate your fixes. Of course, we want to record all the test results. At Highway 3, we recommend using a specially made wiki that both the team members and Highway 3 can all access. It's obviously very important to help identify actual gaps with the issues of the data. And with all testing, let's provide continuous feedback to all the stakeholders, the champion testers, the leadership, and your partners at H3. So everyone's in the loop, and the wiki helps enable this for them. Use a partner like Highway 3. Our role at Highway 3 is to guide this migration. We take your data very seriously. We understand that your data is a priority. We look forward to helping you into your final destination with the merged instances. We are most interested in building a setup that grows with your organization, provides productive activity within your teams, and is securely compliant with regulations. We also have partner exclusive information, and we've seen this process before. So your teams can be supported by our time and our effort, instead of doing something maybe internal to your organization, which might be a little bit more ad hoc, maybe off the side of your desk, and possibly resulting in deadlines being missed. Your role is culture and change. It is going to be your teams that are going to be using the new instance, the merged instance. We need your help to help understand and reduce the scope. And we all have to collaborate together and to perform effective actions and testing that is needed. We participate in and facilitate communications between you and Atlassian. Often we need to optimize the help desk tickets, and we have been full-time users of their services for a few years, so we can understand the benefits of the analysis that they provide. Mm-hmm. We also know the tips and tricks for how to get action items completed in a timely fashion. So we encourage you to use the resources that are available to you, which would be your partner, Highway 3, and Atlassian support. You want your teams to be able to save time by asking Atlassian, or better yet, ask your partner to ask Atlassian for you. Mm-hmm. By doing this, a lot of unnecessary and unneeded analysis can be avoided with cloud-to-cloud migrations.
That's great. We have reached the question part. Karen, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you so much, Rob. Lots of information. Okay, so first question is maybe not directly related to a cloud-to-cloud migration, but what is a release track? So
in the cloud, there, Atlassian, when I say they're constantly releasing features. Now they give you the opportunity to kind of be in 3 tracks for that. My nomenclature for these might be a little rusty, but essentially you're getting stuff, every feature as they release it, or you're getting stuff batched into, say, it might be two-week groupings, so you get everything in a 2-week release, or you don't get anything until you've opted into accepting a change set. I believe those are the 3 buckets. So it's important when you're doing a migration, maybe the source and destination were on different release tracks.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Okay, another one. Do workflow schemes migrate with the assistant tool?
I'm happy to say they absolutely do.
That's a lot of work to redo, so good news.
A lot of exports, yeah.
Are there size limits to the data-only migration? So there's 1,000 user or 1,000 issue limit, I believe, to export. So how do you get around that when you're doing a data-only migration?
Yeah, that's a great question. So thanks for whoever asked that. There essentially isn't a great answer here. You are still limited, unfortunately, by this 1,000 limit of the export. So yeah, for doing a data-only migration, you do need to plan for this. We could recommend certain ways that you'd mitigate this. Maybe you group the projects into like an archive group or group by business functionality, or you just find a way to cut up that pie a little bit. And unfortunately, you would have to perform X number of migrations.
Sounds good. Okay, another one. Can you migrate just a single project or space with the Cloud Assistant, or is it everything?
You can do as granular. Right now, you can choose as many projects or as few projects as you want. So you could do one project, you could do a subset of projects. You could, yeah, it's fairly flexible at this moment.
Sounds good. Okay, this one is a tricky one, I think. Can you migrate users to a new email address? So in the case of a company acquisition, if everyone's email is changing, can you do that with the assistant?
That is a good question. So to the best of my knowledge, you cannot do that with the migration assistant. However, Atlassian has a product called Access. And if you used Atlassian Access, you'd be able to use the managed accounts. And by using Access and managed accounts, you can accomplish bulk email updates for the users. So there would be a way, but not with the migration assistants.
Yeah. And I can say from our past experience in doing this kind of email account migration, it's not a trivial task.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that is all of the questions. Unless anyone has anything else, last second or two to pop in the chat.
I think there might be good to go here. Thank you so much, Rob.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone coming by and listening to the webinar.
Thanks. Follow along on our LinkedIn page for our next webinar. This is not the last one by any means. Give Rob a shout out for how well he did today, and make sure you tune in for the next one, and we'd be happy to share those with you. So thanks so much for attending, everyone, and we will send out your lunch gift card in the next week or so. And cheers. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.